Hi everyone, I'm Zakiya, and I am here on behalf of Shift Collective. Okay, there they are. And for those of you, and I'm also representing a team of us. Two of my collaborators were not able to be here with us, Bergis, Jules, and John Voss. For those of you who don't know, Shift Collective is a nonprofit consulting and design group, mostly made up of archivists and designers and community workers. And we collaborate and consult with community groups to help them to better tell their community stories, preserve memory, and sort of create lasting engagement projects surrounding community memory. And so this project that I'm going to talk about today is not so much deep into web archives, but does sort of glean some lessons that can be used as we think about storage solutions for web archives, especially those that contain the histories of marginalized communities, organizers, and sort of more precarious or ephemeral web archive material. Okay, well, the name of this project is called Modeling Sustainable Futures, proposing a risk assessment and harm reduction model for community-based archives using decentralized digital storage. Really long title, as we are all probably used to. And this work is a 3-year project funded by the Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web. Project summary. Now we're on the right slide. So this project explores the ethical, cultural, and technical needs for small cultural memory organizations. And we use the shorthand CBAs or community-based archives who sort of steward some of the world's most precious archival material and cultural heritage material. That is no shade to large institutions like the one we are sitting in, but also a little bit of shade. And these community-based archives are on the ground working with their own memories in their community, and are also some of the most under-resourced organizations, and find it difficult to find funding for a number of reasons, and are sort of working really hard and tirelessly to keep those materials, both analog and digital, close to home and accessible to the people who need to access them the most. And so the goal of this project is to sort of prototype a community-centered solution that is non-extractive for digital storage, which is something that community-based archives often find inaccessible for funding reasons, for capacity, and resources, both human and financial. So some of the project objectives include sort of working with a small group of community-based archives, many of which are stewarding materials that are anti-state, and they are organizing to protect their communities. We have groups that are working against police brutality, against gentrification and displacement. We have groups that are preserving LGBT history in the southern US, where it is severely threatened in this moment, and in sort of public institutions. And so working with those folks to get their voices and understand their needs around long-term digital preservation, and to document what those needs are and what they would need from a digital solution like decentralized storage solutions. And in year one is sort of where we had these conversations facilitated, and both, having these community-based archives in conversation with each other to sort of identify those needs. We're now in year two, where we are looking to sort of design a technical framework by working with technical advisors who are both in web archiving world, archives world, and also bordering in and out of the decentralized web to sort of be our technical translators a bit, and also help us to sort of design this framework that can incorporate these needs that have been communicated over this first year, and still sort of with and in conversation with these community-based archives as they are at the center. And then year 3, we will hopefully have a framework that we can pilot and sort of have these community-based archives to use History Pen, which is a Shift Collective tool for storytelling, to sort of pilot and add in some of their collections and to sort of see if this ethical framework that they have identified and built can actually work within this system. And so part of what our goal is to sort of think about some of the inevitability of decentralized web solutions entering into library world. So we've probably heard of like crypto and blockchain and some of these words, which I'll get into in a little bit. But that is slowly becoming a big part of archival and library storage solutions. And so before we sort of hop headfirst into those with some of this precious material that is meant to be protected, that is meant to be accessible for some, but sometimes not for all, based on cultural principles, and just based on, you know, the people who are stewarding it are making decisions about the sovereignty of their collections and their communities. And so wanting to get ahead of hopping headfirst into these technologies and not really knowing where the ethics lie, how some of the organizations may be collaborating with state actors, police, military, and how that may impact some of these communities that are completely anti-state, anti-military, and protecting material that protects them and keeps them alive as they sort of deal with persecution and sort of state violence. So some of our research faculty include folks from Black Voice News, Warrior Women Project, which is an indigenous community, SADA, the South Asian American Digital Archive, the Southern California Library, Don't Shoot Portland, which works on police violence in Portland, Oregon, Spelman College Archives, Texas After Violence Project, Invisible Histories Project, and one of our tech advisors, Ed Summers, which many of you may already know. So to start, I've already defined community-based archives, so I won't go too deep into that. Again, one of the, our main problem here is that community-based archives struggle to find storage solutions that work for them, both ethically, that are affordable, and also work within sort of the principles of the materials and the communities that they're working within. So this is when we get into the tech stuff that we all had to learn as we are digging into this world. So again, much gratitude to the Filecoin Foundation for giving us the time and space to actually ask these questions of like, what is this? Like, I hear about these things on the news in the world, but we don't often sort of in community facing work, which is understaffed. You don't always have the time to like sit down and explore new and up and coming technologies or concepts because you are still in the work, you have backlogs, you're in addition to sort of your preservation work, you may also be helping someone find housing. You may helping someone find a lawyer to help with a court case. And so the time to sit down and ask, what is blockchain, is just not a thing. And then someone comes to you and they say, hey, we have this beautiful solution for you. It's blockchain. And you're like, okay. And then you put your stuff in there and then you find out this was a terrible solution. So we sort of started with the importance of defining some of these terms and also sort of separating them. So we have sort of blockchain, we have decentralized storage. Decentralized storage being a solution where data is stored across multiple servers and locations and devices. So for those of you who are familiar with like lots of copies, keep stuff safe, it's sort of that concept, but bigger and more ethereal and lots of the other terms I would use for it. There is sort of a security in things not being centralized and having them accessible in multiple spaces. Blockchain technology is sort of a distributed ledger where you can sort of manage data that is securely stored different places. Some of the concepts that came up in this work that were really important to the research faculty were sort of the immutability of working with decentralized storage technologies. So in some of these communities, there's material that this is like active records that they're using in their day-to-day. The community is changing, the community needs are changing. And so sometimes things need to be preserved, sometimes they need to come down and be activated, whether that is in a court case or it is sort of as people are doing community building. And so they don't need it as accessible as they might have needed it last year. And so we've sort of made this distinction between active records, archives, and then activated records as they sort of go through different life cycles, but it's not always just one directional where it goes into the archives and then stays there. Sometimes they come back out, especially in these communities. And so some of these were troubling concepts for our faculty. Also thinking about transparency being a good thing, but sometimes you want to keep things private. And so a concept that is in this space is something called a trustless network, which is kind of like you can trust everyone, and so there's no trust. And for community-based archives, that kind of just didn't work. They were like, we need a trustful network. Like we work within the realm of people, and we have to have trust amongst us, you know, to say that we're all in the same network. And some of the things that were important for that was consensus and understanding, respect for confidentiality, being open and honest, of course, not having derogatory language or personal attacks, oversight committees, and things of those nature. And something that we proposed was a harm reduction design for technical development, which is something that could sort of be borrowed for any sort of technical decision making. So harm reduction is sort of coming from the world of drug use and thinking about in the world, people do use drugs. How can we make it safer for them to do so? Not necessarily saying that that is we're encouraging drug use, but saying that just acknowledging the reality of the world and wanting the world to be safer for everyone. And so in this case, thinking about how these technologies can be harmful if people using the technology are not in the space when it's being made, there can be harm done and there can be unintentional harm as well. So how can we mitigate that harm with the harm reduction framework? So physical accessibility, takedown policy, some of these things that we're already familiar with, but putting it all into one framework. And so to do that, we kind of created these use cases, looking at different community-based archives types. So one being indigenous knowledge organizations, next slide, and looking at both the benefits and the risks with using this technology. And I will stop it. Well, I'll go to what's next, which I've already kind of talked about. We're deciding on between locks and IPFS, which is way too much to go into at the end of a presentation. But this is sort of our timeline and where we're moving. As you can see, we're at IIPC, so check. Doing regional community workshops, which we just did one in London earlier this week. More to hear from us. On our website, we have our full report from year one. This deck is also available, as well as a 2-pager that kind of explains what decentralized web is. And at the end of the full report, we have an extended bibliography on what is Web3 and some of the ethical approach and literature that we use to inform this work. And yeah, lots of reading material. But yes, thank you.